All right, Mike Masato back with you here, CEO of Staff Driven Dental and the Dental Road Warrior, back with episode 8 of our series here. Today the topic is going to be the top 2 things by a statistical survey, and this is research that I've done in surveying staff when I evaluate practices. The top 2 things by a staff survey, which they tell me in private, are the number 1 and 2 reasons why things are not as good as they could be or successful with the practice. So here they are in no particular order. They can be 1, 2. Number 1, what they always tell me is things don't run right here. And number 2, we don't communicate well. So let's look at those 2 things. When the staff person tells me, a team member tells me that things don't run right here, that what they're saying is we need to have better systems and better policies and obviously better training. That's what it's code for, in order for this practice to get and achieve success with the level the doctor expects us of. So that's number 1, or it could be number 2, depending upon the office. But number 2 or number 1 is communication. Communication being we don't communicate well here with each other, us with the patients, us with the doctor with us, the doctor to the patients. Okay, many types of communication in the practice. As a matter of fact, all problems you have in practice boil down basically to bad or no communication. So it's such a vitally important thing, and it's just so neglected in a practice. And invariably, doctors will lead to complaining about staff and their staff because and you look back at why, it's a communication thing. And really, reality check here, Doc. When's the last time you really communicated with your staff? It's so important. I mean, they'll communicate with us. We get them behind closed doors, boy, we get them to open up. And the things that we hear from staff. And look, we're very good at separating fact from opinion. Just because a staff member says it doesn't mean it's true. But for the most part, we get truth. And that helps. That helps really isolate the sources of problems in your practice. And one of the things you have to start doing here is really making staff number 1 and patients number 2. It's really a shift in philosophy in practice. When you start to begin to look at your practice, it's time to make staff number 1 and patients number 2. What does that mean? What does traditional business logic always teach, right? The customer always comes first. The patient always comes first. The problem with that mentality or that philosophy of business, which is very old school, by the way, is if the patient always comes first, who comes second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth? The very people you want to have make these people be number 1. So you have all these high expectations and vision of how these patients are supposed to be treated, and the staff members are saying to you, or your team saying to you, wait a minute, we don't even get treated this way. We're supposed to roll out the red carpet, bend over backwards, go the extra mile, blow them away with this amazing attention and service, and we don't even get that in return. So it starts with really taking care of your team. They're the most valuable investment you got. I just don't understand, for all the money that's invested every month in staff. I'm at an office recently, the practice is spending $10,000, $15,000 a month in staff, all right, with high turnover. Why is that? The reason being is the practice really lacked the attention. And the guy is a great doctor. Nicest guy in the world you'll ever meet. Most doctors I meet are great doctors. They really are. They just don't have their attention in the right place. The attention should be on the staff, first and foremost. You want to have amazing service and blow people away that come in there and say, wow, what an amazing office. It starts with your team, and your team a reflection of you. So guess what? If you have, you don't put a good attention on them, or care about them, or show that you care about them, if they're important to you, or you have or you have, God forbid, bad manners with them. It's amazing to me in this day and age, 2017. I have to teach doctors about manners. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's amazing to me, manners. We were all taught this growing up. Maybe it's a younger generation thing, but I'm talking doctors that are in my age category. We forget that manners are important. Please and thank you, and not yelling and not screaming and not interrupting and not throwing instruments. Seen that in my day too. I've had instruments go by my head early on in my days. So I've seen it all in my time. It's incredible to me that bad manners. How much you sabotage your practice and your goodwill with your staff with bad manners? All right, I've heard swearing and disrespect. These people are not indentured servants. All right, just because you pay them doesn't give you an open, free ticket to do and say whatever you want to do. Let's start with manners. Speak and act to people with respect. Give them the treatment as you would be expected, or you would expect when you go to a practice. Because if you don't, what happens is that attitude and that mentality translates in how they interact with your patients. So it starts with really taking time to give your staff attention, nurturing them, train them, create an environment that they want to come to work in every day that's fun and enjoyable and stress-free. And that translates and goes miles, all right, for taking care of your patients. I'll take that as a starting point over training any day. Let's start with, that at least that creates an environment where you have willing staff that really want to be there, will do whatever it takes for you on your behalf, have got your back, want to see you do well. You should really, again, this kind of attention on them and treating them well, and giving them training, because if they're not going to succeed without training. They're not going to meet your expectations without that. And if you got them there and you're paying that kind of money, then obviously they're worth the money in your mind. So instead of complaining about them, train them, and they will live up to your expectations more often than not. More often than not. I think in about 20 years of doing this, I recommended about 10 staff get fired out of the gate. And they were basically criminals that they had to go. I was finding out they were, in some capacities, they said, robbing the practice blind by their presence, Other than that, for the most part, staff usually step up. It's amazing how they change and shift in their attitude, right, when you start giving them attention. And morale is huge in a practice. This all contributes to a thing called morale. Morale is a very intangible thing. I can sense the level of morale in a practice when I walk into it. Right? And production is a basis for morale. Morale is a basis for production, which means the higher the morale in the practice, in the feeling of, positive, goodwill, light-natured environment, when things aren't heavy and serious and they're fun and enjoyable, that goes a long way in a practice. But a lot of production happens during that time. All right. So again, these are things that really make a huge difference, with your team and getting the most out of them. Right? But you really got to start shifting your attention and looking how you are. I always say it's who you're being about what you're doing. So when you go in every day, you set the tone for the practice. I was talking to a doctor today, this great doctor I was talking about. On average, he's in half an hour late to an hour late every single day. The world revolves around his schedule. What kind of tone does that set for the day? How do you think staff reacts? Now the entire place is stressed out because they're running backed up in a very busy practice all day long, because he's in his own universe and his own world and has no reality of what's going on with his staff. Communication with your staff member creates good reality. What's reality? Reality is agreement as to what's real and actual in your practice. You may think it's one thing. You'd be amazed when you talk to your staff how different of reality they have about how you are and how you treat them and what the practice is like. All right. So again, this mentality, a business mentality, a business approach of making staff number one and patients number two goes a long way. It's one of the main reasons why I named my company Staff Driven Dental. All right. Because again, the staff drives the practice, or they won't drive the practice, depending upon how you care and take care of them and the attention you give them, and the manners you have with them and the respect you have from them, the dignity you give them. All right. As team players in your practice. What you want to do is you want to cultivate an environment of motivated, trained, inspired, happy, junior entrepreneurs. Like they really have your interest at heart and the interest of the practice at heart. Okay, if you don't have staff like that, okay, time to go back to the drawing board, and it starts with you. It doesn't start by cleaning house necessarily and hiring all new staff and getting rid of the quote-unquote bad ones. All right, it starts really with you, Doc, taking a step back, really assessing how you're being with your staff, getting in communication with them, sitting down and finding out the true reality of what's going on with your practice, right? And then approaching it in a different way, all right? So a little fire and brimstone today about this topic. It's just because it just came up so much with me this week in meeting some really, great practices with a lot of potential. Hope you enjoyed this episode 8. Be back with episode 9 before you know it. Dental Road Warrior Mike Rosado over and out.